rather than being stopped by a filibuster. And for this reason, I intend to vote in favor of the motion to invoke cloture on the senator from Oklahoma's amendment, and I encourage my colleagues to do the same, and I yield the floor.
Madam President, may I make an inquiry of the chair? How much time
from Oklahoma.
How much time is remaining for the Republican morning business?
15 minutes and 20 seconds.
Thank you. It's interesting days in our country. We find ourselves in a very deep hole. And it's not the American people's fault, it's Congress's fault. We continue to spend money that we don't have on things that we don't need. And when we do that personally, we end up filing bankruptcy. Pretty soon we run out of new credit cards to take on, and we get to the point where we can't pay our debts. And that's the question that's in front of our country today. As our economy is struggling, we have this massive debt, and we ought to be about every small, medium, and large thing we can do to solve the problem. Not to solve the problem to say that we can't pay our bills, but to solve the problem so we create a prosperous future for our kids and those that follow us. Now, there's a lot of controversy over the amendment that I offered, and it's claimed by the majority leader inaccurately that this amendment was Rule 14. It wasn't Rule 14. According to the procedures of the Senate, you can file cloture on any amendment at any time. That's a privilege that every senator has here. Now, why would somebody file a cloture on an amendment? It's because over the first 5.5 months of this year, through the leadership of the Senate, we've been unable to have a free and open debate and free and open offering of amendments. So this isn't, because the procedure is rarely used doesn't mean it's not ethical and not accurate. Matter of fact, the reason the procedure was put there is in case at the point in time when your rights as a senator to offer amendment are being limited by the majority. That's why we have this rule, because you can take 16 of your colleagues and file a cloture petition and therefore have a vote on your amendment. So what we're hearing going on in the background today is the reason you shouldn't vote for this amendment, even though you agree we should get rid and save $3 billion, much as the senator from California outlined, $3 billion that the very people who are blending and receiving the $3 billion don't want. The argument is because they don't like the way the amendment came to the floor. Well, explain to the people at home, when you have an opportunity to save this country $3 billion, and you know it's the right policy, but you're not going to vote for it because you don't like the way the amendment came to the floor. And I would remind my colleagues that of the $3 billion we're going to save, $1.2 billion of it we're going to borrow from China if we go on and spend it. And we're going to charge that $1.2 billion to our kids and our grandkids. The interesting thing is that we have grown over 20-some years to rely on ethanol for 7% of our fuel. And it's been a very expensive process. It's expensive directly because when you go to buy gasoline today, it's not the price you pay at the pump that you're actually paying. You take all the subsidies and all the tax credits and all the low-interest loans and all the non-repayment of all the grants and all the monies that have been put into this program, and when you buy that tank of gas, every gallon that you put into your car after you pay for it, you already paid $1.72 through your taxes to have that gallon there. So we're not getting rid of the mandate on ethanol. It's 7.5%. It has helped us in some ways. It's a very inefficient fuel. It causes us to consume more fuel, produce more CO2. But the fact is we have an amendment on the floor that is designed to take away a subsidy, and the only reason we're taking away the subsidy is because in law we're saying you have to do it anyway. And I would introduce for the record a letter from the refiners who state, this is the National Petroleum Refiners Association, who represent 97% of the people who get this tax credit. All right, 97% of the $3 billion, they say they don't want the $3 billion. Now, the vote's going to come down to really clear. We're going to give $3 billion to some of the most profitable companies in America, or we're not. The interesting thing is they're saying, please don't give it to us. Please don't give us this money. Now, think at a time when we're borrowing the money to give to them, and they're saying, don't give it to us, we're going to have a vote on the floor and very likely not win because of a procedure or because of parochial interests. The fact is every gallon of ethanol that's blended to gasoline, whoever does the blending gets 45 cents a gallon. And they don't need it because they're going to blend it anyway. So the real question is will we continue to be ignorant in Washington of the common sense that the American people want us to have? And the common sense is that if you're paying somebody to do something, and by law they have to do it anyway, and then they write you a letter and say, please don't pay me any more to do this, I'm going to do it for you anyway, why would we continue to send them the money? Why would we continue to do that? Especially when 40% of it we have to borrow from the Chinese to be able to pay it to the American oil company. It makes no sense. There's no logic that you can come up with. The calculations out of Iowa State University on this $3 billion is that the amount of jobs that have come out of this in the past cost $14 million a year a job. $14 million a year per job created out of this subsidy. No wonder we're broke. No wonder we're failing financially. No wonder we're failing our children and our grandchildren because we continue to do things that don't have any correlation with logic or common sense. And I know the arguments. I know the argument is that, well, we passed this last year as part of the extension. Well, as a Republican, I was one of the few Republicans that didn't vote for that extension. Because not only did we pass additional tax cuts and additional unpaid programs, we cut no spending to be able to pay for it. So all we did was borrow a whole bunch more money and not solve any of the critical issues that lie in front of our country. 40% of last year's corn crop went to ethanol. Matter of fact, there's so much ethanol production. Last year, we shipped 400 million gallons overseas. That's great, except when you take the time to think about that with that 400 million gallons, we sent $500 million worth of subsidy. So now we're subsidizing the ethanol that goes to Europe with your tax dollars so they can have cheaper gasoline than we have because they're taking $1.72 per gallon and getting the benefit of our tax dollars to have cheaper ethanol in Europe than they can get from other places. So there's nothing about this that makes sense other than if you are a wonk and study the politics and the procedures and the parochialism that goes on inside the political body. And that's what's got us in trouble. We're more interested in power and position and party. I'm sick of both parties. We better start focusing on the real problems in front of our country. We're going to have a $1.6 trillion deficit this year. And the way you get rid of a $1.6 trillion deficit is $1 billion or $2 billion or $3 billion at a time. Here's something that makes absolutely no sense. Here's something that has no true demand for it. Here's something that is $3 billion that the people we're paying to say they don't want the $3 billion, and we're not going to take them up on it? What part of stupid are we? I mean, you know, this is like a Pharaoh movie. It doesn't make sense. It's comedic. We've had a lot of debate. Let me just talk for a minute about what's going on in the agricultural community throughout this country if you're a poultry, milk, or livestock producer. You can't bring your cattle to feedlots right now because corn's too expensive. $7.65 a bushel yesterday. You can't afford to fatten your cattle, so they're not bringing them in from the range. We're slaughtering dairy cows all across this country because 70% of the cost of dairy cows is the corn that you feed them. We're going to get all sorts of untoward interruptions and price increases in our food if we continue this silly policy. 70% of the cost for chickens is feed. We're having chicken processors close and go into bankruptcy. We're having chicken raisers, the actual chicken farms, a lot in Oklahoma, a lot in Arkansas, a lot throughout the South, even over in Delaware and in Virginia. They can't afford to feed the chickens. So what's going to happen? Because we have this false subsidy. The fact is 15% right now of the food increases in this country that you've seen in the last year are directly associated with this policy. Directly associated with this policy. And that doesn't have any effect on the fact that what can we do by sending $7 corn out of this country to our balance of payments, which would help our trade imbalance. Instead, we're burning it. And it's a highly inefficient fuel. It's a highly inefficient fuel. Everybody knows that when they fill up with 15% or 10% ethanol, they get much poorer gas mileage. Everybody knows that. In Oklahoma, we have all these stations where it says ethanol free. And why do people pay 10 or 15 cents more a gallon? Because they win on mileage. They actually get better performance when they don't have ethanol in their fuel. We all know that. It's just in some states you don't have that option. We're fortunate. We can still buy real gas. I understand we have about 3 minutes left. I will close with the following statement. This is going to be a historic vote. Not about ethanol, not about subsidies. It's going to be a historic vote that sends a signal to the American people. Either the people in Washington get it and are going to stop wasting money on programs that they don't need to waste on, and they're going to start acting in the best long-term interests of the country. They're either going to do that or they're not. And so when we see the results of this vote, and you're going to have a hard time explaining, I voted against that because I didn't like the way the amendment came up. The fact is here's $3 billion that we don't have to spend over the next 6 months. And if we don't spend it, that's $3 billion we're not going to have to borrow from our children, and they're not going to be paying interest on for the next 30 years. This comes down to the point in time, does the Senate recognize the amount of trouble we're in, and are they willing to give up parochial interest, procedural interests? Are they willing to do what is necessary to put this country back on course? My hope and prayer is that they are. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The senator from North Dakota.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise this morning to talk about America's energy future. The reality is we need a diversified energy future. What I mean by that is we need to develop all of our energy resources. In my home state of North Dakota, we're doing just that. We have coal, and we're developing clean coal technologies. We have oil and gas. We have hydro. We have biofuels, ethanol, and biodiesel. We have solar. We have wind. We have biomass. And we're working aggressively to develop all of them, both traditional sources of energy and our renewable sources of energy. 10 years ago, in 2000, when I started as governor of North Dakota, we set a course to develop a comprehensive energy plan to develop all of our energy resources, both traditional and renewable, and to do it in tandem by encouraging private investment that would spur the development of new technologies to develop traditional sources of energy and renewable sources of energy and create new and exciting synergistic partnerships that would both diversify our energy mix, help us produce more energy more cost effectively, create good quality jobs, and improve environmental stewardship. And that's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's happening in our state, and that's exactly what we need to do as a nation. Let me give you some examples from our state. Oil and gas. Oil and gas development has taken off in North Dakota. We are now the fourth largest oil-producing state in the Union. We recently passed up states like Oklahoma and Louisiana, producing more oil, and we're producing it from new formations like the Bakken Shale and the Three Forks, and we're doing it with new technologies, directional and horizontal drilling. And we figured out how to use those technologies like directional drilling and hydraulic fracturing in new ways that produce more energy, but do it with good environmental stewardship. For example, in the case of hydraulic fracturing, we recycle the water. We go down 2 miles underground, we drill directionally underground for miles, so it's a much smaller footprint. One well now produces maybe what 10 or 12 wells used to produce. And the water we use to force the oil to the surface, we send back down. We recycle it, we use it again, and ultimately we put it back down hole where we drew it from in the first place when it came up with much of the oil that is produced. In the case of coal, we take lignite coal and we produce synthetic natural gas. And we put it in pipelines and we send it to other parts of the country, just like the gas you pull out of the ground. And at the same time, in one of our plants, we're capturing CO2, the carbon dioxide. We're capturing it, we're compressing it, we're putting it in pipelines, and we're sending it out to the oil fields for secondary or tertiary oil recovery. So those are some of the new developments that we're undertaking in traditional sources of energy. But as we do that with things like oil and gas and coal, we're also developing the renewables as well. For example, wind. Our state is now the 9th largest wind energy state of all 50. We're continuing to move up the ranks, and that includes investing billions of dollars to make it happen. Again, more energy for our country, from more diversified sources, creating good jobs in the process. And think how important that is. Think how important it is to create good jobs at a time when we have more than 9% unemployment, 15+ million people out of work, an economy that we need to get going and growing. And energy development represents an incredible opportunity to make that happen. But when we talk about energy development, we need all of the different sources of energy. And each has strengths and each has weaknesses. And that's why we need the mix. In our state, we also produce biofuels, ethanol and biodiesel. And clearly the discussion today is how do we best create that environment to continue the development, the production, and the growth of ethanol in a way that is cost-effective, that serves the taxpayers of this country, but continues to develop that vital industry for our country at a time when we need to reduce our dependence on foreign oil, when we need more domestically produced energy, when we need quality jobs, when we need a growing economy. And we can do it. We can do it with the right kind of energy policy. With the right kind of energy policy, and that's what we're talking about today. Think about ethanol. It helps reduce our dependence on foreign oil. For every gallon of ethanol we use as part of the fuel mix, that's one less gallon of gasoline we're bringing in from the Middle East. And by increasing supply, we help reduce the cost of gasoline at the pump for our consumers. And in addition to that, we're creating good-paying American jobs. In 2010, the ethanol industry employed 400,000 workers in good jobs throughout the United States. 400,000 jobs. It provided an important market for American farmers throughout our country. It displaced the need for 445 million barrels of foreign oil. Let me repeat that. It displaced the need for 445 million barrels of foreign oil, and it reduced the price of gasoline at the pump by 80 cents a gallon for the American consumer. Now, in addition to all that, the ethanol industry paid $11 billion in federal taxes in 2010. I want to emphasize that point. In 2010, the ethanol industry paid $11 billion in federal tax. So it is an important industry to our country, and we need to continue it. The point of the discussion today, though, is how best to do that. And so for this discussion today is how do we create the right environment to stimulate private investment, so we have that growing economy, we have more jobs, we have more energy, but we also generate more tax revenues with less government spending, so we both grow our way out of this debt and deficit, we get this economy going, we create a better energy future for these young people and young people all over our great country. Well, that's why I've sponsored legislation along with Senator Thune and Senator Klobuchar, that will reform the ethanol tax credit. It will provide deficit reduction and set us on the right path for alternative fuel development in our country for the long run. The legislation is called the Ethanol Tax Reform and Deficit Reduction Plan. And it's the right way. It's the right way to transition from the current VTEC, volumetric ethanol excise tax credit, rather than the amendment today to simply do away with VTEC. This is the right transition for us to make from the VTEC to creating the right environment to stimulate investment and energy growth in biofuels for the future. The Ethanol Tax Reform and Deficit Reduction Plan provides $1 billion in deficit reduction right away. Provides $1 billion in deficit reduction, but it also provides the right transition for ethanol by providing the right kind of energy policy. Specifically, we provide incentives for things like blender pumps that offer consumers choice, and we provide the right kind of incentives for research, development, and deployment of second-generation ethanol, specifically cellulosic ethanol, so that instead of making ethanol from food products, we're making it from stover and wheat straw and other sources. Now, by combining blender pumps, flex fuel vehicles, and common sense regulation on the part of the EPA that encourages higher fuel blends, we create the business environment that will foster growth in the ethanol industry. What does that mean? That means, number one, we avoid the ongoing cost of subsidies like the VTEC. Second, we set the ethanol industry up for long-term growth. Third, we gain jobs. We gain jobs at a time when we badly need them. We produce more energy, which reduces our dependence on foreign oil, and we gain tax revenues. We gain tax revenues to help reduce our deficit. So we not only spend less directly, helping to reduce the deficit, we grow our economy, and that growing economy builds on the $11 billion that the industry is already paying in federal taxes, and we grow that base while we're growing our job base. That's the right way to move forward, to move out of our deficit situation in this economy, to get our economy going, and also to produce more energy. This is a market-based approach that will give customers more choice and also reduce their fuel costs. For example, you go into the station. There's a blender pump there. You have a flex fuel vehicle. You can dial up whatever blend you choose, anywhere from 0% biofuels all the way up to 85%. Whatever works best for you, whatever works best for your pocketbook, whatever works best for your vehicle. We have blender pumps in my state. We have an incentive for blender pumps in my state, and as a result, we have more blender pumps than any other state in the country. And the reality is today, if you buy fuel in North Dakota, almost all the fuel you buy will have ethanol in it, and you don't even realize it. Why? Because at a 90-10% blend, every vehicle can use it, and it's the lowest price cost gasoline at the pump. So dealers want to sell it. Consumers go up and buy it, and they simply buy it because they pick the lowest cost fuel at the pump. And it's a 90-10 blend. And that's where we're going with this, a market-based approach. And that's how it can work for the benefit of our economy, and for the benefit of our energy future, for the benefit of reducing spending, and for the benefit of growing our tax revenues. That's the choice that we have today, and that's the right way to approach job creation and energy development in our country. We are reducing spending. We're improving and creating an environment for private sector investment that will help us build a pro-business climate for energy growth and for economic growth in our country. And I urge my fellow senators to make that pro-growth choice. Thank you, Mr. President. And at this point, I yield the floor.
Morning business is closed. Under the previous order, the Senate will proceed to executive session to consider the following nominations which the clerk will report.
Nominations: the Judiciary, Claire C. Cecchi of New Jersey to be United States District Judge for the District of New Jersey. Esther Salas of New Jersey to be United States District Judge for the District of New Jersey.
Under the previous order, there will be 1 hour for debate equally divided and controlled between the two leaders or their designees.
Mr. President.
The senator from New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've been asked to make a request for the committees to meet, and Mr. President, I've got 9 unanimous consent requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and the minority leaders, and I ask unanimous consent that these requests be agreed to and that these requests be printed in the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today's a distinct honor for me to have the opportunity to fulfill the constitutional commitment that each of us has to assure the public at large that justice is being administered as it should be. We fulfill this commitment by making sure that vacancies on the federal bench are filled with individuals who have the proper experience and will provide the kind of fairness and balance in decision-making that confirms America's basic tenets. Mr. President, during a 2-year hiatus that I took from the Senate, I was honored with a naming of a federal courthouse in Newark, and I was so pleased to have that association with the justice administered in our society. But before the building was dedicated, I asked that an inscription that I authored be placed on the wall. It reads exactly as I labored to write it, and it says that the true measure of a democracy is its dispensation of justice. As a matter of fact, when I shared that moment with my dear departed colleague, Senator Ted Kennedy, who questioned whether I wrote it because he knew I wasn't a lawyer, but we joked about it, and I confirmed that that's the way I saw things. The sentiment behind that quote underscores how seriously I take my role in recommending New Jersey District Court nominees to President Obama. And that's why I'm so proud to come to the floor today to urge my colleagues to confirm President Obama's nomination of Judge Claire Cecchi and Judge Esther Salas to the United States District Court for New Jersey. Both are well qualified for the court, having devoted their careers to upholding the rule of law. Throughout her career, Judge Cecchi has demonstrated her ability to navigate complicated legal matters and manage to complex cases. And during the confirmation process, she has showed the temperament. Let us know something of her candor and to display the kind of character that she brings to the bench. For the past 5 years, Judge Cecchi has served as the United States Magistrate Judge in the District of New Jersey, where she's provided over hundreds of civil and criminal cases. Before joining the bench, Judge Cecchi spent 14 years in private practice, focusing on complex civil litigation. And one of her passions is to try and encourage young people to pursue a career in the law. She's hosted a program called Bring Your Child to Work Day programs in the district court, as well as a mock trial for a local 6th grade class and let young people have some understanding of what goes on to make sure that justice is fairly served in the federal courts. Justice Cecchi's community spirit is pronounced in her activities. She's volunteered for the Junior League Orphans with AIDS, the Human Needs Food Pantry, and the Salvation Army, to name just a few. She graduated from Fordham University Law School. He graduated cum laude from Barnard College at Columbia University. Before being appointed to the bench, she was a partner at 2 New Jersey law firms and was an assistant corporation counsel for the city of New York. Like Judge Cecchi, Judge Salas has earned the respect and admiration of New Jersey's legal community. First, as an accomplished litigator, and for the past 5 years as a United States Magistrate Judge. And she's going to be the first Latina in New Jersey to serve as a magistrate judge. She was the first Latina, I say. And in a newspaper profile a few years ago, Judge Salas recalled how when she was 10 years old, her family lost everything in a fire in the apartment building where they lived. The judge's mother said to her, and I quote it as she gave it to us, "Things are going to be fine. We've gotten this far, and we're going to make it." What determination that shows. And I like to tell this story because I believe it demonstrates how Judge Salas's experience have shaped her life and her career. She's known hardship, but she has also known great success as a member of New Jersey's legal community. Before Judge Salas became a magistrate judge, she served 9 years as an assistant federal public defender in Newark, representing indigent clients in a variety of cases. In addition, Judge Salas has worked in private practice, handling appellate work for a New Jersey law firm. She's a graduate of the Rutgers University School of Law, and she clerked for a New Jersey Superior Court Judge, Eugene Cody. Additionally, Judge Salas has served as the president of the Hispanic Bar Association of New Jersey, an organization to which she has devoted countless volunteer hours for her career. And as I shared with the Judiciary Committee when I introduced Judge Cecchi and Judge Salas in March, I'm not a lawyer, but I have a deep and abiding respect for the law. And I was pleased to recommend Judges Claire Cecchi and Esther Salas because both are unquestionably qualified to serve on the district court, and they'll bring honor to the people of New Jersey and our country. So I'm confident that my colleagues in the Senate will agree and vote overwhelmingly to confirm their nominations. And with that, I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President,
Senator from New Jersey.
I ask unanimous consent that further calling of the roll be dispensed with.
Without objection.
And I ask further that the remaining time be available. And I just want to take a moment, if I may, to check with the clerk, please. Okay, and I ask the time during quorum call be equally divided.
Without objection.
And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
I rise to urge my colleagues to vote for the confirmation of two of New Jersey's most outstanding judicial professionals to fill two vacancies for the United States District Court judges for the District of New Jersey. And I understand that vote will be taking place around noon. Both of these very qualified women are now United States magistrate judges. Judge Claire Cecchi and Judge Esther Salas are among the most respected leaders in New Jersey's judicial community. Both have demonstrated skill and professionalism on the bench and an impressive ability to manage the heavy and complex dockets before them. Judge Cecchi has a broad range of litigation experience, having worked in the private sector for over 14 years. After serving in the Office of Corporation Counsel for the City of New York, she practiced with Robinson, St. John and Wayne, and later with Robinson, Lapidus, and Lavelli, both large and well-respected New Jersey firms. Mr. President, she has been no stranger to complex litigation for both defendants and plaintiffs. In the course of her distinguished career, she has focused on a range of challenging issues, from security litigation and complex tort matters to employment law, criminal cases, construction cases, and contracts. In handling a case involving a suit by the Securities and Exchange Commission, a prominent cast against two companies in federal court in the Southern District of New York, Judge Cecchi demonstrated outstanding legal skills. She was singled out by many in the legal profession in New Jersey for her depth and range of knowledge on the subject and for her conduct of the case. Judge Cecchi later went to the firm of Carpenter, Bennett & Morrissey, the second oldest law firm in New Jersey, where she worked for almost a decade developing a range of litigation experience in environmental and toxic tort cases, class actions, patent cases, and employment law. She is a graduate of Fordham University and Barnard College at Columbia University and began her career clerking for the Honorable Kevin Thomas Duffy of the Southern District of New York. As a U.S. magistrate judge, she has shown a unique set of judicial skills that make her an exceptional choice for the position of United States District Court judge for the District of New Jersey, and I urge my colleagues to vote to confirm her nomination. Magistrate Judge Esther Salas has been an exceptional public servant. In 2006, she became the first Hispanic to serve as a United States magistrate judge for the District of New Jersey. In her handling of a docket of well over 400 cases, she has earned the respect of many in the legal community who have said that she is the finest judge they have worked with in many years of practice. In a 10-year environmental dispute involving 350 attorneys, she managed the resulting avalanche of motions and counter-motions, including federal and state claims, for more than $300 million in cleanup costs and damages. Her handling of the case prompted several lawyers not only to credit her with being the principal moving force in bringing the parties to agreement, but recommending her to the Judiciary Committee with their unqualified support. Prior to serving as a U.S. magistrate judge, Judge Salas worked for almost 10 years in the Federal Public Defender's Office, where she zealously provided her clients with the best legal advice and skilled defense in what were often difficult and complex cases. Judge Salas clerked with distinction for Superior Court Judge Eugene Cody, a proud New Jerseyan. She earned her degrees from Rutgers University and Rutgers University Law School. She is a respected member of the New Jersey State Bar, a past president of the Hispanic Bar of New Jersey, and an extraordinary jurist. Mr. President, these two extraordinary nominees, two of New Jersey's most respected legal professionals, both deserve confirmation by the full Senate as U.S. District Court judges for the District of New Jersey. I urge my colleagues to confirm the nominations and give New Jersey two respected and distinguished district court judges who have earned the confidence of the legal community in my state, the recommendation of the Judiciary Committee, and in my view deserve a unanimous vote in the full Senate. Thank you, Mr. President. With that, I yield the floor and observe the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Thank you.